The gift of the Nile. In context. Location Egypt. Before. Circa 9000 to 6000 BCE. Neolithic farmers settled in the Fayum Oasis, a lake formed below the Nile Delta in northern Egypt. Circa 3500 BC, the Naqada culture in southern Egypt begins to mummify the dead. After 671 to 666 BCE, the Assyrians invade and eventually conquer Egypt under Ashur-bani-pal. 332 BCE, Alexander the Great seizes Egypt. Ptolemy, one of his generals, establishes a new dynasty in 305. 30. Cleopatra VII dies. Egypt becomes a Roman province. 639 to 642 CE, the Rashidun Caliphate invades Egypt, establishing Muslim rule. 1517 CE, Egypt is absorbed into the empire. The story of ancient Egypt is built around the Nile and its bounty. The river supported every aspect of life in a civilization that was without equal in the Mediterranean world for almost 3,000 years. The fish were plentiful, and farming in the rich black soil of the floodplains revolved around the river's seasons. Mining, trade, and the transport of materials to build vast royal monuments in the desert relied on the Nile's flow from Upper Egypt in the south to Lower Egypt in the north. Ruling dynasties. Egypt's rise began after Narmer united Upper and Lower Egypt around 3150 BCE. He founded the city of Memphis on the Nile Delta, and by the Third Dynasty it had replaced Thinis as Egypt's capital. His was the first of a string of ruling families that were outlined in the 3rd century before Christ by the Egyptian historian Manetho. After the Second Dynasty, successive dynasties to sit within the 3 golden ages known as the kingdoms. The Old Kingdom, dynasties 3 to 6, the Middle Kingdom, dynasties 11 and 12, and the New Kingdom, dynasties 18 to 20. Between them were 3 intermediate periods tainted by political crises, internal struggles, and foreign invasions. However, ancient Egypt continued to progress in every field of human endeavor, from hieroglyphic writing, art, and mathematics to the building of the cities, feats of monumental funerary construction. Divine rulers. Rulers of Egypt, the pharaohs were revered as divine intermediaries between the people and a panoply of gods, many of which took hybrid human and animal forms. The god held sway over all activity on earth, from fertility and birth through Nile floods and harvest to life after death. Major deities include the son of god Ra-Array, with the head of a hawk, and Osiris, the symbol of death and resurrection and the final judge of souls. Vast pyramids encased royal tombs furnished with paintings and treasures, and the rituals of mummification and funerary spells were essential rites of passage to an afterlife that was middle life on earth. The pharaoh's duty was to maintain order, truth, and justice as ordained by the goddess Mut, and ensure the people's economic and spiritual welfare. His will was administered through a chief minister, the vizier, and enforced throughout the nomes provinces into which Upper and Lower Egypt were divided. Mathematical papyri. Ancient Egyptians were one of the earliest civilizations to develop key mathematical concepts for civil engineering, managing food supplies, and calculating the flood levels of the Nile. Surviving documentaries include the Berlin Mathematical Papyrus, 1990 to 1800 BCE, which includes formulae for solving unknowns x and y from simultaneous equations. In the Moscow Mathematical Papyrus, 1700 BCE, problem 10 in a set of 25 problems requires the challenging calculation of the surface area of a hemisphere, while problem 14 asks for the volume of the truncated pyramid. The 87 problems from the Rind Mathematical Papyrus, 1550 BCE, range from number theory and arithmetic to algebra, geometry, and trigonometry. Number 24 asks, a quantity plus its seventh becomes 19, or x plus x over 7 is 19. What is the quantity? Problems 41, 50, 51, and 52 ask for the volume of cylinder in the areas of a circle, triangle, or trapezium. The Old Kingdom. During the Old Kingdom, 2575 to 2130 BCE, up to 13 pyramids were built. The first, the Step Pyramid at Saqqara, close to the Delta, was part of the funerary complex for Pharaoh Djoser, the second ruler in the Third Dynasty. The sixth edifice was the earliest colossal stone structure in Egypt and is accredited to Djoser's vizier Imhotep, a fabled priest and polymath who was later worshipped as the god of medicine. Snefru, the first ruler in the Fourth Dynasty, commissioned a straight-sided pyramid at Meidum and the further north in Dashur, the Bent Pyramid and the Red Pyramid. The tomb of his queen Hetepheres, discovered in Giza in 1925, held an alabaster sarcophagus, gold inlaid furniture, and silver bracelets encrusted with semi-precious gems. The Great Pyramid of Giza was built for Snefru's successor Khufu, and the two smaller pyramids for Khafre and Khafre. During this era of prosperity, Egypt became an urban civilization with cities, towns, and ports dotted along the Nile, and a population of some 8 million living in the 11,500 square miles, or 29,785 square kilometers, of habitable land fringing the river. Sun-dried brick houses of up to 2 stories with courtyards, pools, and gardens were lit by oil lamps. Over time, power shifted as the capital's wealth and resources were drained by the construction of temples and massive funerary monuments. Provinces under the control of the district priests began to divide for power, and rule was fractured through the First Intermediate Period, 2130 to 2040 BCE. A Middle Kingdom papyrus, the Admonitions of Ippur, described this area of strife as the poor seized power from the rich and invaders poured in from the Middle East. The tribes of the desert become Egyptians everywhere. Golden Eras and Strife. The era known as the Middle Kingdom, 2040 to 1782 BCE, emerged after Mentuhotep II defeated the provincial city of Heracleopolis in Lower Egypt and made Thebes, the city dedicated to the god Amun in Upper Egypt, capital of a reunited country. Under Senusret II in the 12th dynasty, the provinces flourished through investment in excavated wells and reservoirs. The new city of Kahun had roads crossing at right angles and stone gutters, small homes of 4 to 6 rooms, and mansions up to 70. Excuse me. In the Second Intermediate Period, 1782 to 1570 BC, Hamitic Semite people entered the north and built their capital Avaris. From the 13th to the 17th dynasty, Egypt was ruled by conquerors, before the last of them, the Hyksos, or shepherd kings from West Asia, were overthrown by Ahmose I. So began the New Kingdom, 1570 to 1069 BCE, ruled by a succession of 31 pharaohs who oversaw Egypt's expansion into the Middle East and the Sudan. Amenhotep I, the second ruler in the 18th dynasty, established the cult of Amun and commissioned shrines and a towering limestone-gated Karnak. During his 25-year reign, he assembled artists, poets, scientists, and theologians, and a culture flowering that included production of a medical work, the Ebers Papyrus, which had chapters on dentistry, intestinal disease, gynecology, and ophthalmology. Up to 13 women may have ruled Egypt at intervals, but Hatshepsut was one of the few given the title and powers of a pharaoh. During her 21-year rule, she commissioned a rock-cut temple at Deir el-Bahri. On the walls are records of voyages to the land of Punt at the southern end of the Red Sea to bring back insects, wild animal skins, gum, gold, ivory, and ebony. This flow of wealth continued during the reign of Amenhotep III. Egyptian exports of grain, papyrus, linen, and leather were matched by imports of wool, wood, olive oil, and iron for weapons, wine from Asia Minor and Syria, and copper and silver from Aegean and Mediterranean islands. Rise and fall. At its peak in the 14th century before Christ, the city of Thebes, present-day Luxor, straddled the Nile and supported up to 1,000,000 people. In the city's edge, well-furnished houses with up to 60 rooms lined the tree-shaded avenues. Near the center stood the royal palace, the House of Rejoicing. The title Pharaoh, from the Egyptian word for great house, dates from this period. The great temples on the east being bustled with priests and scholars. In the 18th century, Amenhotep IV renamed himself Akhenaten to found a monotheistic religion based on the sun god Aten at Amarna. His son Tutankhamun restored the old religion. In the 19th dynasty, pharaohs such as Ramses II brought Egypt to the height of its imperial power, but the 20th dynasty was marked by a shift in power to the priests of Amun and Thebes. Civil unrest, disputes between heirs, and drought plunged Egypt into decline. The Third Intermediate Period, 1069 to 525 BCE, saw invasions by the Syrians, the Persians, and the Greeks. After the death of the last pharaoh, Cleopatra VII, in 30 BCE, the Romans ruled Egypt intermittently for 600 years until the first Muslim invasion in the 7th century. Ramses the Great. Coming to power in 1279 BCE, when the new kingdom was at a peak, Ramses II, the second king of the 9th dynasty, earned the title Ramses the Great in recognition of his extensive military campaigns and the architectural legacy of his long rule. During his 66-year reign, he amassed a standing army of 100,000 soldiers to regain territory lost in previous reigns and to fend off invasions from Libyan, Turkish, Hittite, and Nubian forces. The famous victory that Ramses claimed over the Hittites at the Battle of Kadesh is disputed, and after gaining a string of territories it became difficult to control. He made a peace treaty with Hittites in 1258 BCE, awarding reciprocal powers. His marriage to at least one Hittite princess secured the pact. Ramses' architectural legacy included a new capital city called Pi-Ramesses, a memorial complex of temples called the Ramesseum close to Luxor, and 2 rock-cut temples at Abu Simbel. He died in 1213 at the age of 96.